Buenas and Hafa Day. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here for these public hearings this morning. The Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice is now called to order. Today's Monday, June 18, and the time is about 9:14. Notices for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on July 11 and again on July 15, 2019. The notice was also published in the Guam Daily Post on July 11th and July 15th, 2019. So we have three agenda items this morning. At 9 a.m. we are going to hear the bill number 93-35, sponsored by T.M. Barnes, an act relative to rezoning lot 1107-1-3 new, located in the municipality of Maggie Lau, from single-family dwelling, R1, to commercial for the purposes of establishing a medical clinic facility. At 9:30, we will hear bill number 154-35, also sponsored by T.M. Barnes, an act to authorize Imagalahinguahan to relocate 384 plus or minus square meters of an existing bull cart trail within lot 5071-1-2 in municipality of Tamuning to an area consisting of 746 plus or minus square meters within said lot for public right-of-way use. At 10 a.m., we will hear resolution number 94-35, sponsored by myself, T.M. Terlaje, relative to seeking compensation for cancer and other illnesses caused by exposure to ionizing radiation, and to further expressing the support of Imina 35 na Legislature in Guahan for the passage of Senate Bill 947, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act Amendments of 2019, introduced in the United States Congress on March 28, 2019, which would amend the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act to include Guam as a downwind area. So we will now begin the public hearing on bill number 93-35 COR. So I'd like to thank those who signed up to testify. And I would invite first anyone who wishes to testify on this bill, please come to the front, and Mr. Borja from Land Management, if you could also please join us. And I understand Dr. Sopher will also be joining us in a few minutes. So before we hear from the panel, I would like to read a statement by the sponsor, who is our speaker, Tina Munya Barnes, who could not be here today. So this is her statement on the bill. Thank you, Madam Chairperson Terlaje, for hearing bill number 93-35 COR and allowing me to submit my statement to the committee in my absence. Bill number 93-35 COR was introduced because of the lack of quorum at the Guam Land Use Commission to approve zone changes. I understand the importance of the role of the Guam Land Use Commission. However, I believe it still is in the center. Currently, the property is zoned R1. This bill will change the zoning to C, commercial zoning. We believe this is a good use of the property. For many dialysis patients, missing or being late to an appointment is sometimes life or death. Having dialysis services close to residential areas will be beneficial to our community. I hope we can act urgently to bring closure to the property owner, Situas Maasi. We will now accept testimony from the Department of Land Management. According to our law, before the legislature considers any rezoning bill, it is required to seek the input of Department of Land Management, and in particular the get a land zoning consideration report, which consists of reviews from several of the agencies of the government of Guam. So we are in receipt of that land zoning consideration report, and so if we could hear from the Department of Land Management, Mr. Borja.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Joseph Borja. I'm the Acting Director of the Department of Land Management. The Department's recommendation and support is listed in the land zoning consideration report, but let me read it into the record. The requested zone change is compatible as there is an existing medical clinic 100 feet to the north of the property. There are other commercial uses located in close proximity to the proposed medical facility, such as mom-and-pop stores, an elementary school, and a church. Located farther is the Department of Public Health and Social Services, many eating establishments, and large supermarkets, and the community college, with the Guam Community College and the University of Guam. There is an uptick of rezoning and building activity along Route 10 to include rezoning of lot number 1107-3B to R2 to construct a 4-unit, 2-story apartment complex, the rezoning of lot 1103-3-1A-1 to LC, limited commercial zone, to construct a commercial building with limited uses, and the passage of Public Law 32119, which rezoned lot number 1106-2 new to commercial, restricting the uses of that lot to medically related enterprises. This is the site of the American Medical Clinic. And the construction of a commercial complex on lot 2320-new-2. And while the predominant use of the land in the immediate area is for single-family dwellings, having such a facility will not be contrary to the mixed-use category as this area is designated in the North Central Land Use Plan. A mixed-use category primarily focuses on larger commercial centers and corridor, including commercial uses such as medical and other services that require large sites and draw customers from throughout the island. This medical facility is necessary and in response to the increasing healthcare demands of the island. Residents and clients in the southern part of Guam and those employed and living in the general area especially stand to gain increased convenience. The intended use of lot 1107-1-3 new in Maggie Lau solely for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a renal dialysis clinic for the community and its surrounding neighbors provides convenience by bringing such services closer to residents of the central and southern villages. The proposed land use is compatible with nearby and adjacent uses, namely the American Medical Clinic to the north and the Maggie Lau Public Health Center, which is just over a mile southwest of the property. For these reasons, the Department of Land Management is in support of this legislative proposal and recommends that Bill 93-35 with amendments to reimburse the Department of Land Management for costs involving the land survey consideration report be passed and that the kidney dialysis clinic be constructed and operated. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borja. Mr. Borja, the law requiring a land zoning consideration report requires certain components. So one is the recommendation of the Land Planning Division. So would your testimony constitute the recommendation of the Land Planning Division?
That's correct, and I believe in the land zoning consideration report, which includes the signature of the acting chief planner, Celine Cruz. The application review committee, of course, was convened by the planning division to review the land rezoning bill.
And the recommendation of the application review committee, I see, minutes from the committee's meeting, and I see some reports submitted by agencies that are part of the application review committee. But in the minutes, if I'm not mistaken, some of them say they will be submitting. Do you believe this is complete, that they've all submitted testimony or their input regarding this project?
Yes, Madam Chair. As of the date of submittal of this consideration report to your committee, those were the only comments that we had received, and we were up on a 45-day deadline on it. All
right. And A map of the subject property has been provided. Contact listing for the surrounding property owners for the purposes of notifying them of any public hearings or other public discussion to be held in regards. I want to put on the record that we have received this, but did you have a recommendation regarding the adjacent landowners, surrounding property owners?
No, the surrounding landowners, and I'm not sure what you mean by surrounding, adjacent or 500-foot radius. Actually, this property, I believe, was bought from the family or acquired from the family that owns the majority of the property to the south of American Medical Clinic.
Well, the law I'm reading says surrounding, but I know that when they go through the normal land use rezoning process, that you notify those within 500 feet radius, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And the land zoning consideration report statute only addresses adjacent, but the department attached a listing of the property owners of a 500-foot radius, which is the standard that the Land Use Commission uses. So the list that is provided in the land zoning consideration report, starting on page 15, 16.
Yes, I acknowledge receipt of that list. So that is those within 500-foot radius.
That's correct. Those are.
All right. It also requires evidence of any consultation made at the discretion of the department with other permitting governmental departments and agencies and the property owner in consideration and review of the requested zoning designation and the outcome of any such consultation.
That would be the application review committee, yes.
All right, so we've got all of their input, and then input from the Municipal Planning Council. I see, and the Municipal Planning Council of Maggie Lau has recommended approval of this. They say they are in support. And all right, so if you could please just go through the Application Review Committee agencies' input. First of all, did they vote, or did they just submit their input? Because in the minutes, I don't see a vote.
No, they did not vote. They just submitted their input. Each separate agency submitted their report.
So is it fair to say that there's not an overall recommendation from them, just input from the various agencies?
Yes, separately.
All right. So do you mind just giving us an overview of the input of the different agencies that were involved?
In general, we find that all of the agencies except one recommended support and approval of the bill. The first one that I see here is the Guam Waterworks Authority, and in it they support the zone change as long as the developer complies and completes any system improvements necessary to support the development, which is basically a standard reply by Waterworks. The next one on the land zoning consideration report is the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. And the Bureau of Statistics and Plans actually recommends disapproval of this request. And in their writing of June 28th, recommendation and decision, it says the bill fails to provide any substantive arguments for deviating from the future land use designations pursuant to Public Law 9626, Appendix A. The Bureau hereby recommends disapproval of this request. That's from the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. From the Guam EPA.
Just one minute.
Sure.
So on BSP, what is the source of their concern?
The source of their concern was the failure of the bill to provide any substantive argument for deviating from the future land use designations. And it says pursuant to Public Law 96-26, which might be a mistake under by Bureau of Statistics and Plan. That might be Executive Order 96-26 rather than Public Law 96-26. I don't believe we've had a 96 legislature yet, and I'm not sure that this argument goes back to the 26th legislature. The digits, when you cite a public law, the numbers that follow that public law narrative usually is one of the digits or one of the sequence of numbers is the legislature in which the law was passed.
Sure. So you're saying they might have a typo. Instead of saying public law, they should have said Executive Order 96-26.
Yeah, I don't
All
know
right.
that that's a typo because, they spelled out public law, so it might be a...
But they're citing that pursuant to that,
Yeah,
the Bureau hereby recommends disapproval.
Right.
But their concerns seem to stem from the direct and cumulative impact to the northern Guam lands aquifer. Therefore, the request to rezone this property and its intended use is contrary to the elements of the North and Central Guam Land Use Plan.
that's a standard reply from Bureau of Statistics and Plans that it makes concerning the aquifer. That is on page 1. The property is located on the Manila watershed, according to the Bureau of Statistics and Plan.
All right. Please proceed with the next agency.
The next agency is the Guam Environmental Protection Agency. And EPA says the staff of this agency has reviewed the subject application and does not have any comment on the proposed zone change, provided the owner, developer, and contractor complies with all relevant laws and regulations administered by Guam EPA, and addresses the following concerns specific to the site. The proposed development must be connected to public sewer, and the proposed development must meet all requirements of the Guam Soil Erosion and Sediment Control Regulation, and must provide both pre- and post-construction stormwater controls, meeting the requirements of the 2006 Guam Stormwater Management Manual.
All right. I would note for those listening that when an application goes before the Guam Land Use Commission, normally they have the plans already set out, and so these agencies would be able to determine whether their plans meet these stormwater controls. And the difference in this process is that those plans are not yet submitted in detail, and so they're putting this as like a future condition that they must meet these things. All right, GPA?
GPA generally supports the project, and the position statement is designed to GPA. I'm reading from GPA. Under the Development Review Committee, GPA provides position statements to the Guam Land Use Commission on zoning and other land use activities. The position statements is designed to ensure compliance with GPA standard, rules, and policies, and to evaluate the ability to support the proposed development and the impact, if any, to GPA's infrastructure. Although the property owners has not submitted plans, GPA understands that it is in the intent of the owner to develop Lot 1107-1-3 new, Municipality of Manila, from R1 dwelling to C commercial zone. Consequently, GPA provides the following comments and recommendations concerning GPA requirements. GPA has no objection. However, customers required to comply with the following pursuant to the National Electric Safety Code and GPA's service regulations. Coordinating overhead and underground power requirements with GPA engineering, maintaining minimum clearances, maintaining adequate clearances between any structure and electric utility easements, and to secure electric utility easements required, provide scheduling and magnitude of power project demand, and all relocation costs for GPA facilities, if necessary, are 100% chargeable to the applicant. Primary distribution line extensions and GPA service connections must adhere to the guidelines, and a fair share assessment for power generation, transmission, and/or substation facilities may be required. Based on a preliminary inspection of the site, the electrical facilities may require upgrading to meet the demand of the proposed project. The applicant will be responsible for the minimum cost of upgrading the line if submitted plans indicate additional capacity is required. And John Benavente, General Manager. So any system upgrade that would be needed because of the project, that cost will have to be shouldered by the applicant.
Has any sign been put up on this property, like a notice of rezoning?
No, Madam Chair, although it is not required, that would be a recommendation for probably future legislation to change that statute and require a sign on the site, whether it be legislative rezoning or Guam Land Use Commission rezoning, which does require a sign now.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Borja. Now, if I know the others have signed up, but Dr. Sopher's here, the owner and the developer. Is it all right if we have him go first? All right, Dr. Sopher, welcome. And okay, Mr. Jesse Leung Guerrero, please proceed.
Hello, Senator. Good morning. Thank you again for all your support and assistance, you and your staff. This bill, I feel, is just a bipartisan bill, and I don't think there's much issue to be discussed except for the needs of our island community. So let me begin with my testimony. As one of the major problems on our island is the shortage of highly specialized medical care. Dr. Sopher and his team of specialists continue to bridge that void, and the facility being proposed herein will only enhance that goal and provide them with the tools to be able to carry out a much-needed medical service for the central and neighboring part of our island. I have known Dr. Sopher for over 25 years, not only as my primary physician, but his clinic associates and staff have been providing highly specialized medical care to my family and our entire island community in the field of nephrology and hypertension. His research and writings in diabetes has catapulted him into the forefront of international medicine. This dialysis facility and the collateral services it will provide will most certainly be of extreme benefit and convenience to kidney patients in the village of Maggie Lau and surrounding areas. It will also support the mission of Pacific Medical Group in its ongoing quest to deliver convenient and efficient medical service to its ever-growing kidney patient base. The facility is being established to meet the needs of the community, as its purpose is strictly for the patients it serves. Kidney patients on Guam are a special group of individuals and tend to gravitate to each other. They share their experiences with each other and can relate to the difficult life process one undergoes as a dialysis patient. Pacific Medical Group just makes their life a little more bearable. Hence, I respectfully ask for your affirmative vote in the passage of Bill 93-35 COR as an expression of your unequivocal support for all of Guam's kidney patients and their families. The need for this facility is crucial. Thank you, Senator. And also, I also, when we introduced this bill, I sent an email to every senator requesting their co-sponsorship in the bill. Okay? Just for your information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leung Guerrero. Dr. Sopher, did you want to add anything to that? Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, Mr. Leung Guerrero said it most elegantly. However, I want to just give you a historical background to this. Of course, I'm here for support of the legislature, and we are appealing on behalf of our patients and families to reference to the zone change. When I came here about 24 years ago, there was one dialysis unit at GMH and 100 patients. Back then, there were 5,000 dialysis units in the nation, in US. We were number 5,000 with respect to quality of care given to the patients. We had the highest mortality and morbidity among 5,000. After 3 or 4 years, we received a certificate from CMS for best improved units. Today, there are 7,000 dialysis units in the US. We have 700 patients and 5 dialysis units. We are among the best with respect to quality of care given to the patients. We are ranked top 10% and a 5-star store, 5-star dialysis unit. So this is all owed to, number one, our patients who transformed from the past to the way today medicine is practiced. And number two, to our staff, dedicated staff. We have over 150 staff, physicians and nurses and physician assistants, nurse practitioners, dialysis technicians, and biomedical engineering. They've worked very, very hard, and I am proud to say that we came from negative to positive over the past 20 years. Having said that, of course, we are in a place where diabetes is highly prevalent, 3 times more than the US mainland, and therefore kidney disease and dialysis is three times more prevalent than US mainland. And we have had such a increased rate of disease here on Guam, where you saw from 100 patients, we went to 700 patients in 20 years, where the US mainland from 5,000 dialysis units went to 7,000. And you could see the difference, how disease is really wide over here in the Pacifics. With Mr. Leung Guerrero mentioned research, and we actually did the genetic research some 12 years ago. Today we got the results. And in fact, 4 days ago, it was published in the Diabetology, showing the 2 genes that we found that tomorrows have, which is called obesity gene. This is forefront of science, and it would translate into prevention, treatment, management of diabetes and future diabetes and kidney disease. This building is, of course, a state-of-the-art building called The Village. We envisioned the village to be a place of home for dialysis patients. Dialysis patients' home, second home is the dialysis. And so the vision was to provide a building which is both soothing and welcoming, and that's what we've done. You could see the first one was Sinania. And this is, I think, 4th in a series, and we continue to expand this as far as it takes, not because we do bad, because we are doing good. We have been able to treat patients and keep patients going and stay with their families for much longer than if you were in the mainland. And this is the reality. That's why numbers are expanding. And of course, we humbly ask for your support for this zone change. And I gave my testimony to somebody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sopher. We also have signed up Mr. Ben Ghazi. Please proceed.
Senator, Mr. Ben is is the engineer of the project, and you know, if you have any questions regarding the design,
Okay.
he can provide
Great,
you.
thank you.
Good morning, Senator. My name is, can you hear me? My name is it okay?
Just a little closer to the microphone,
see.
if you don't mind.
All right, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Ghazi. I'm the design engineer for this project. And I would like to give you an update on the status of our design progress for the new dialysis center in Manila. We started our design efforts, planning and design efforts back in May of 2018, and we have been in.
Having a little hard time
All right,
hearing you.
sorry.
Sorry, if you could just,
Maybe I
yes.
should speak louder.
Thank you.
Okay. Is it okay? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
there you go.
And we have started our design efforts in May of 2018. That design efforts has been in coordination with various utility and government agencies, including GPA, GWA, EPA, and we have performed the tests that we needed to do to begin our design process. And at this point, we have our draft design completed, and we have verified the existing utilities in the area, and it is all incorporated in our draft design at this point. And the next step for us is to finalize our drawings as soon as we have the opportunity to submit our plans for the permitting process. So this is basically where we are. We are, by the end of this month, we should be able to submit our design drawings for permitting. And if you have any questions specific to the project, I would be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thalia, is it Ganj?
Ganji.
Thank you. Ms. Ganj.
So I'm a resident of Maggie Lau. I met Dr. Sopher a couple of years ago. I was doing some part-time administrative and accounting consulting for him. But I have 2 children with severe disabilities. And in April, my daughter had a very bad medication accident. And when she was in the hospital, Dr. Sopher consulted on her case. And he made a very good call on one of the medications that was affecting her health, and it would have caused severe kidney damage and probably long-term kidney failure if she had not withdrawn from that medication. And I so appreciate his consult on her case and the prevention. She is confined to a wheelchair right now and making recovery. We hope that she will be walking again within the year. But it really brought home to me the need for good consult care. Although Dr. Sopher's clinics primarily provide end-stage renal care for kidney patients that have already are on dialysis. There's also the other clinics, the Pacific Medical Care clinics, that provide the doctor consults and the regular clinic care for patients like my daughter that are not at that phase yet and that they need preventive care and are going to make recovery. And that is so important also for our at-risk community. And when I spoke to Dr. Sopher about the risks for our community and how many of our people, especially our Chamorro population, which my children are heading for end-stage renal failure if they do not take action and get help and education, it really hit me hard. We need that help. And because my daughter is confined to a wheelchair now, I really appreciate also the need for access. I'm learning how difficult it is to have just ramps, access in the house, around the house, and any convenience that we can find is so helpful. Even a clinic in our neighborhood. So I really support the thought of having a clinic in Maggie Lau to be able to access for the renal support as well as the nephrology patients that need to access dialysis care. I would hope that we would have one in every village at some point, but Maggie Lau first. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ganji. We also have signed up to testify Jolene. Jolene? If you could state your name for the record, please.
Half a day, Madam Chair. Thank you. My name is Jolene Ho, and I came here today with no intention of testifying, but after listening, I feel strongly compelled to do so. Thank you. And I'd like to testify in 3 different capacities. The first of which, I am a social worker for one of the dialysis clinics here on island. Through that experience, as one of the renal social workers, I can speak to the tremendous growth in terms of rate of need. We are getting so many more patients who are needing dialysis, and while our facilities that are currently on island are able to address it, it's only going to be for a matter of time before there's just too many people who need it, and we don't have the facilities to support it. So we need more clinics, and one that's centrally located would be ideal, because many of our patients are coming from other different areas of the island, so someplace central is ideal. The other capacity, the second capacity I wish to testify in is as a Micronesian woman. This is definitely a Guam issue, a local issue, but I also want to point out that for me, it's also a regional issue. I'm from the outer islands of Yap. My family migrated here when I was about 4 years old from Yap. My parents are retired public school teachers here on Guam. And I've had many relatives who have come to Guam from the FSM because they needed dialysis. Some have passed, some are still patients today. In the rest of the region, there's only a couple of islands that have a few chairs, dialysis chairs, but the majority of the islands do not have specialized facilities that can provide the care that people need. And as Dr. Sopher mentioned earlier, the rate of the prevalence of diabetes and hypertension is quite great here in the region. So for me, this is also a regional issue, because we have many people from our neighboring islands who require dialysis and end up moving to Guam to obtain it, obtain this life-saving treatment. And until those islands can, get to a point where they can have their own facilities, I think it's important that we have them here so people can access the care they need. The third capacity I wish to testify in, and probably the most important for me, is as the family member of a dialysis patient. I have several cousins who are currently on dialysis, but also my father. He receives dialysis here on island. And he's been a dialysis patient now for about 6 years. And I can say those are 6 years we would not have had it not been for the dialysis facilities, had it not been for Pacific Medical Group, had it not been for Dr. Sopher, who was my father's primary nephrologist when he first started. Those are 6 years with my dad that my family has had, because he was able to obtain this life-saving treatment. 6 years. And I strongly support this rezoning, this effort to rezone, so that we can build another facility, so that other families who have loved ones who are in need of dialysis can get, whether it's another 6 years, another 10 years, with their loved one. So I just wanted to share my support for this bill and for the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? If not, I'll note that we have several pages of people who have signed up in support of the bill. I won't read your names now, but thank you for being here and thank you for expressing your support of the bill. These sign-in sheets will be part of the record on the bill, the committee report, so that will be noted. And I want to note also for the record, if I could just then proceed with some additional questions. The subject lots are located along Route 10 in Maggie Lau. Although they are surrounded, according to the Department of Land Management, by residential units, they are in close proximity to another medical clinic. But there was something said earlier, and the Municipal Planning Council supports this. However, it was said that this is needed to support the central part of the island. Could you just tell us what other clinics dialysis centers are available around Guam? Maybe just the locations.
Yes, thank you. The first dialysis was in Guam, in Agania, the first one, which we, 20 years later, moved it to Sinania. We wanted to move more closer to south because majority of our patients come from south. There has been a problem setting up dialysis in south, which we should overcome it next year. And the problem has been being far and not having local nurses that live there. And after 20 years, we've been able to capture some nurses that live there. The second one was in Central Tamuning, and the third one was in Harmon Loop, and fourth one was in Fanagayan area, and another one in Tuman, in Micronesia Mall Tuman. So if we were to divide north of island, we have many patients, and we have 3 dialysis units there, and then south, maybe 1 in middle. So we wanted to get closer to south. That's why from Agania we moved to Sinania. It helped the patients. We are going to Manila, which is closer to south, and next one is going to be next year in south.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so there were some comments made by the different agencies that if this is approved, the legislature doesn't really list those as requirements normally, but we would hope that you are going to honor what those agencies have requested, particularly flooding controls, stormwater, and all of the other requirements that they would like to see. And the surrounding landowners were not necessarily notified, or those within the 500 feet, and would you have any objection to the Department of Land Management sending out notices to those landowners? While our next session is scheduled for August to complete the budget, and we'll see if we can get this bill on that agenda, but if not, I can't guarantee that because it's a budget session. It will be in the very next session. But in the interim, do you have any objection to the Department of Land Management notifying the landowners within 500 feet at your cost, and that you would reimburse them for those costs?
I don't have an objection. However, we are pressing with time. They could notify whomever surrounding they wish, but we are doing this because we are pressed with time, and time means lives of patients, lives of people. We need you to understand that whoever decides, I can't tell you exactly what day we will start having to move patients to Hawaii. And is that feasible? It is not feasible. Therefore, mortality. So I don't have any objections. However, we want it done hopefully as soon as possible.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on, okay, so we've got some comments from our legislative council regarding the technical language in the bill. And so I'd like to clarify so the title of the bill says that it's for the purposes of establishing a medical clinic facility. And yet the rezoning language of Section 2 of the bill says it's rezoned to commercial. Section 3 says restricted to medically related commercial activities. For the purposes of this act, medically related commercial activity shall include kidney dialysis clinic, doctor's offices, doctor clinic, pharmacy, medical laboratory, radiological, physical therapy, and similar medically related applications. Utilization of the property for any non-medical related purposes will require a zoning variance. Does this section of the bill where they list out kidney dialysis clinic and all those other purposes satisfy what you are intending?
Kidney dialysis is a clinic. All of those that was mentioned is a part of medical complex clinic, but I don't even know who. I mean, this is primarily for dialysis clinic.
Primarily for dialysis?
Yes.
All right. Are you intending to run any radiological
No.
facility?
No.
All right. All right. And finally, Mr. Borja, are there enough members on the Guam Land Use Commission right now to constitute a quorum?
Yes, bare minimum, but that quorum will not happen until about August of this year.
Thank you very much. All right. If there is no one else who wishes to give testimony, I would...
May I add
please.
one sentence?
Yes.
That it is the CMS mandate to place the dialysis centers in the communities for the same reason, that sole reason of the care, comfort of patient and their families. Of course, preventing traffic to go to the centers also is a factor.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Sopher, is it correct, my understanding, I've been told just secondhand, that the clinics in Sinahaña that you opened are run 24/7 and that they are always utilized, I mean, full capacity. Is that correct?
Yes, over capacity.
Over capacity. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we will continue to accept testimony on this bill until July 26, 2019. And we are going to call the hearing on this bill then. It's adjourned. It's 10 a.m. Thank you very much for all of you. We will now have the hearing on bill number 154-35 COR. So I'd like to read again the statement by the sponsor on this bill. Just a second. Thank you, Madam Chairperson Terlaje, for hearing Bill number 154-35 COR and allowing me to submit my statement to the committee in my absence. This is a statement by Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes, who could not be here, but who is the sponsor of this bill. Bill number 154-35 was introduced out of concern for the property owner and the private residents who use the owner's land as a convenient access to get to their homes. The property owner came to us to find a remedy to this situation by exchanging an unused and no longer useful portion of a bull cart trail adjacent to their property with a portion of their property that can serve as better access for residents in the area. We believe this exchange is reasonable and will be beneficial for our community. We hope to push this bill forward so we can bring closure to the property owner and residents in the area. Situas Maasi. Bill number 154-35 is an act to authorize Imagalahan Guahan to relocate 384 plus or minus square meters of an existing bull cart trail within lot 5071-1-2 in municipality of Tamuning to an area consisting of 746 plus or minus square meters. Oh, I'd like to recognize the presence of Senator Regine Biscoli. Thank you very much, Senator, for being here today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Bill 154-35 seeks to provide a module solution to the public access easements problems in the Harmon area along Route 16. The bill seeks to relocate a bull cart trail of about approximately 384 square meters within Lot 5072, number 1-2, to a larger area, 746 square meters, within the grade map and legally severed. By doing this, the lessee of lot number, Acting Director, Department of Land Management.
Thank you, Mr. Borja. Could you please describe for us where this actually is and what?
This lot is actually behind the Shen's furniture area. And I guess the Shen's operation has ceased operations there, and it's behind the Sweet Home and the 7-Day Supermarket. Sweet Home and 7-Day Supermarket, they front Route 16, and this lot and this bull cart trail are behind those two lots in Harmon.
And are there any other adjacent landowners to the bull cart trail?
Not immediately adjacent, but that bull cart trail does service a group of homes in the backside, further back from Route 16. So it is a necessary easement. It provides access to other homes in the area, in the back.
All right, so could you describe, I guess, the change made by the bill in regards to that easement?
Yeah, the intent of the bill is actually basically flipping the easement within the lot, and along with that flipping of the easement, it still connects to the same exit in the backside, and it still connects to the front of the lot, but it is flipped, and in the process of flipping it, the owner has agreed to increase and sever out that easement, increase it from the 10 to 15 feet variable width of a undocumented and unsevered bull cart trail into a 32-foot easement, which is going to be severed, mapped out, and legally put
so
in the
the
map.
homeowners in the back would not lose access. They would gain a formal access.
They would gain formal access, and they would probably be in a better condition because the existing easement, the bull cart trail, is a dotted line. It hasn't been severed, hasn't been mapped, and it hasn't been recorded. The proposal in the bill here is to document that easement now.
All right, thank you. If we could hear from Mr. Andrew Park and then Mr. Kyung Mil Koo. So, Mr. Park?
I just submitted my letter of support for Bill 154-35 addressed to this committee. But for the record of this hearing, I also would like to read my letter. Half a day, Mrs. Chairwoman and the committee members. My name is Andrew Park. I'm a businessman who has made Guam his home since the middle of 1980s. In 1985, I worked for a Korean-based company on Guam, and in 1989, I opened my own business as a tax consultant. with expertise in accounting and tax preparation services to various businesses on island. Within this time frame, I have become close with Mrs. Young-soo Koo, the president of Momo Corporation. I have known her and assisted her in many business matters for the last 30 years. And we have nurtured friendship and bond in both our private and professional lives that, as may be said in our island culture, we are like brother and sister. I have seen Momo Corporation grow from humble beginnings to now a full-service grocery outlet with the patronage that rivals other large grocery store chains. Indeed, they are humbled by the blessing of opportunity Guam has provided the company. The company president, Mrs. Koo, is a very humble, kind, and generous person. She has always been there to contribute to the community and continues to provide commercial services that benefits our community needs. She approached me to find ways to fix the challenges that 7-Day Supermarket faced, with which was an existing bull-car trail that occurs between the rear of 7-Day Supermarket and Momo Corporation-owned property. The bull-car trail literally prevents any opportunity to consolidate both the 7-Day Supermarket lot with the property at the rear. When the company purchased the leasehold for property that now houses a sweet home store, the challenge was finding out that the existing access to the rear of the property was private property and not the road. I advised her that we needed to work with the government agencies dealing with the roads, and we both were confident that the government of Guam would recognize the need to resolve a long-time public access problem, that in doing so, such a solution would be done in the name of protecting the general public. This, unfortunately, has not been the case to this date. I am here today in support of Bill 154-35 only because I truly believe it is the smart thing to do. Many residents behind 7-Day Supermarket depend on the temporary accessway that is currently being used adjacent to the Sweet Home building. Momo Corporation has expressed to me its fear of something happening to someone on their property while traveling lot 5007-4. Passage of this bill will not remedy this potential liability. As stated in the bill, the company desires to hold the government harmless. However, what is aimed to be achieved is that the legislature recognize the existing deficiency of a proper road access to private properties, and that by relocating the bull-car trail, travelers are provided a safer access alternatively away from ongoing commercial operations. 7-Day Supermarket's loading and offloading operations occur at the rear of the building. Further, from my understanding, land exchange rates between the government and the private landowner normally involve an exchange agreement of same size or equal value. In this case, the private property owner is willing to exchange land at the rate of 746 square meters of private land for 384 square meters of existing bull-car trail, or 48% more land to the government. In ending, Bill 154-35 represent a start to resolving a long-standing issue that has not only affected Momo Corporation, as I have explained, but will also assist many property owners in obtaining full enjoyment of their property. Your kind consideration and approval of Bill 154-35 will be greatly appreciated. Sincerely, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Park, for your testimony and for your recommendations. Mr. Kyung-Moo Kyo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Half a day, honorable members of the legislature. My name is Kyung-Moo Koo, and I am here representing Momo Corporation regarding Bill number 154-35. I am here today because we believe that there are some issues with the existing bull cart trail that need to be addressed. Here are the issues regarding the current situation. As Mr. Park has already mentioned, a portion of the bull cart trail sits between two properties owned by Momo Corporation, and unfortunately this trail isn't clearly defined. So a lot of people use this trail to get to their private property, drivers and pedestrians. Unfortunately, due to operations, we have a lot of vehicles moving in and out of the place, and also industrial vehicles that are operating during our operating hours. The second issue is that the original bull cart trail has been blocked off, and people are using private property as an access road, and Momo Corporation is currently leasing this property for the next 20 years. The proposed land exchange would help resolve the first issue, and it would also make it easy for our company to continue providing access for people through the property throughout our duration of our lease. This would allow for more time to come up with a permanent solution regarding that access. After speaking with some of the residents who frequently utilize the access road and depend on it, the idea of this land exchange came up, and the feedback has been positive regarding this issue and this idea. We hope that you're able to accept our proposal, not just for our company, but for the residents who live in the area as well. Thank you, and I hope that this solution provides a win-win for all parties involved. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koo. So the beneficiary of this bill would be the Momo Corporation,
Yes.
and okay, I guess I didn't realize that part of this arrangement involves a 20-year lease.
Okay.
So the bill says, sorry. The bill says land exchange, right?
Yes.
And then that Momo Corporation will provide and improve one of the lots for public access and utilities use. And I guess if I may ask you, Mr. Borja, is there currently utilities in the bull cart trail?
There are utilities in the area. I don't believe that GPA and GWA will put something permanent into a bull cart trail without it having been legally severed and like that. So if there are any utilities on the bull cart trail, those are probably of temporary nature before the two agencies, GWA and GPA, made it a requirement that easements have to be legally severed before they include any infrastructure or any facilities on that piece of property.
Mr. Koo, are you aware of any easements for utilities that are currently on the bull cart trail? Are they using it for utilities?
No, currently, I don't believe they are using it for any utilities.
All right. So I understand that this would benefit those who require access behind your property.
Yes.
But I guess explain to me one more time the impact of the lease. So you're leasing private property for 20 years, and
Yes.
this new easement would require use of that private property still.
Yes, it would require the continued use of that access. Right now, the original bull cart trail has been blocked off, and people have been using private property as an access road. And if this land exchange does happen, it would make it easier for us to organize the area and make it more accessible for the residents, and so that they can continue using that access road.
The private,
Yes.
the private leased property.
Yes, during our
Yeah, Mr. Borja, is there any concern with that? I mean, do we need to get DPW involved, or are?
Well, DPW should be involved as the, rights of way department. We have here a map that has a sign-off of the various utility agencies. Now, the property being leased, you are allowed to change your property shape within your lots, of course. But you should be authorized under the lease, and then after the lease expires, the property goes back to where it was. And I believe that's where the gentleman said that by that time, hopefully, there will be a resolution to the entire area for the easement, because the easement does serve families and homes in the back side of it. Yeah.
All right, that's what you meant, Mr. Park, by continued liability, that this arrangement does not relieve all the liability because you're still allowing people access over this private property.
Yes.
That will be a requirement. All right. Senator Lee, any questions? All right. Now, this bill, I want to note, waives the requirements for an appraisal that is normally required by law, and this waiver is based on that the parcel of proposed land exchange is of significant greater land area than that it will be exchanged with. All right. Is there anything else anyone would like to add? Sir?
Half a day. My name is Marvin Aguilar. My former boss is to my right. I'm coming here as a private citizen. I think what's important to understand about this alternative access as it occurs, it's occurring today. So, and it has occurred even prior to Momo Corporation taking out that 20-year lease. As a matter of fact, it was, thank you, it was ongoing, I would say, for a little over 30 years, and had been an issue with DPW to holistically look at the Bull Cart Trail maze, for the lack of a better term, in that area to improve it, to provide proper and safe access to this enclave, the residential enclave north of Momoco Corporation, their property. So the bigger picture has been, from the beginning, was to really reevaluate and evaluate and assess the network of Bull Cart trails that ultimately supports the end portion where these residents actually live, and it's quite extensive. Unfortunately, you have buildings and structures that have severed off, the use of them physically, but it doesn't dissuade from the possibility of improvement, either in the very near or later future. So my understanding is that Momo Corporation is willing to take all these, to be the giver, I guess, for lack of a better term, to see this proposal to fruition. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aguilar. And I do appreciate that. And I want to thank you for your willingness to make this offer to the government and to allow access over your private lease for those in the vicinity. And I do hope that we can work on a permanent solution also. Did you want to say something, Mr.?
Hi, yes. My name is Dennis Balagtas. I'm the surveyor for the property. Just to answer your question before, there are no utilities on that. And one of the things that we did when we prepared the survey map was to verify that there were no utilities in there. So I've done a lot of surveys of the properties behind it, and I've always told the possible owners and buyers that because of this lack of access issue, it will affect them at this point. And so as a result, a lot of the property owners simply cannot sell their properties. They have problems leasing, or they have problems mortgaging their properties because of this access issue. So however brief the lease agreement is, it is at least some way for them to have some certainty on their properties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beletas. That's very helpful. Mr. Borja, would this arrangement require a temporary dedication for 20 years of this private access?
For the approval of that consolidation map, that would be indicated on the map.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I have no further questions. And again, thank you for your input and your willingness to serve this area. Situsmasi. So the hearing on Bill 135 is ended now. It's 10:25 a.m. I'm sorry, that was Bill number 154. Thank you. All right, we're going to continue now with our public hearing, and we are moving to the portion on resolution number 94-35, COR. It's introduced by myself with the co-sponsorship of all my colleagues of the 35th Guam Legislature. And this is relative to seeking compensation for cancer and other illnesses caused by exposure to ionizing radiation, and to further expressing the support of Imina 35 na Legislature in Guahan for the passage of Senate Bill 947, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act Amendments of 2019, introduced in the United States Congress on March 28, 2019, which would amend the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act to include Guam as a downwind area. Again, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleague, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee. And I would also like to acknowledge that Guam is a downwinder because of testing that was done in the Republic of the Marshall Islands many years ago. And that I'd not like to acknowledge the sacrifices of the people of the Republic of the Marshall Islands, many who have been permanently displaced from their islands and who suffer high rates of cancer and other health conditions as a result of their exposure to the high levels of ionizing radiation from the nuclear bomb testing during that period. Radiation affects DNA, and generations beyond those that were alive during the testing continue to be affected. The contamination continues to persist in their environment at high levels, and new generations of their people continue to suffer the health effects of exposure and the grief that comes with the loss and perpetual longing to return to a homeland that they are not allowed to return to, and the use of the property that they are not allowed to do anymore. The people of the Republic of the Marshall Islands continue to fight for justice for them, and we stand in solidarity with them. So resolution number 94-35 is seeking compensation for cancer and other illnesses because of exposure to ionizing radiation. the act, or the Senate bill was introduced by Senator Mike Crapo of Idaho. And so we would also like to extend our thanks to him and all the sponsors of the bill. And Guam has had a long history of resolutions in support of including Guam in RICA. Members of the 2002 Blue Ribbon Panel that was formed by the legislature, many whom are not with us any longer, led the way in Guam's quest for justice with published research of radiation on Guam from 1946 to 1952. Panel members consisted of the late Angel Santos, the late Mark Forbes, the late Ben Pangilinan, and the late Dr. Chris Perez. Our current governor, Leung Guerrero, former governor Eddie Baza, and many others. And I want to acknowledge and thank them for their leadership and work in this regard. But I would also like to thank Mr. Robert Celestial, President of the Pacific Association of Radiation Survivors, and the association and all its members for their dedication and advocacy over many years. And they have been relentless in this effort, and rightly so. And so I know that you've seen many of your members pass from cancer. And so I just want to very much thank you for not giving up on and leading the way, really, in leading our government in support of these measures in Congress and for this type of justice. I expect that you will talk about this, but I just also want to thank Mr. Celestio and Pars for the news that we received yesterday regarding a House bill. So we are here to support a Senate bill, but yesterday we found out there's also a House bill that has been introduced by Congressman Lujan, Ben Ray Lujan. And I believe this is a lot to do, that Guam was also included in that bill because of the efforts of Mr. Celestial. And I want to also thank our Congressman, Mike St. Nicholas, for his sponsorship of that House bill. All right, Mr. Celestial.
Buenas and Hafade, Guahusi Robert and Celestial.
Thanks.
On behalf of the Pacific Association of Radiation Survivors, thank you very much, Chairman Terlaje, Senator Bisco Lee, and thank you for joining us again, Senator Sabrina Perez. The reason we're doing this is because for our people of Guam, and I'd like to begin with our PowerPoint presentation, if they could put it up on the screen. This is our group from this year, and we get a lot of support, and I thank all the individuals that have joined us over the years. And next slide, please. And this is why we're doing it, is for the folks from 2002 when we started our first group. A lot of our members have passed away, like you said earlier, and one seated here, a lot of them couldn't make it this morning because of they are at work. Next slide, please. And so, as you had mentioned, we have the late Speaker Tony Pinco, Senator Angel Santos, Senator Speaker Ben Pangilinan, and our good friend, the late Dr. Perez. The gentleman in the bottom, Mr. William Brady, was a health physicist that our organization hired to come with me to the National Academies of Science to testify for Guam. The other one is a scientist from England, Mr. Mark Purday, and he passed away. Also with Lieutenant Bert Schreiber, he passed away also with our activist, the late Ed Beneventi. Next slide, please. Yes, from 1946 to 1962, the United States detonated 66 nuclear and hydrogen bombs in the Marshall Islands, and a total of 43 detonations at Inuitak Atoll. This photo was from the first hydrogen bomb detonated in the Pacific, Inuitak Atoll, on November 1st, 1952. This date is very significant for Guam because this bomb was a 10.4 megaton hydrogen bomb. The ones they detonated in Japan were just 19 kilotons. So this bomb was over 1,000 times greater than the ones they detonated in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Next slide. Yes, again. Yes, this is Inuitak Atoll. You have 40-some islands. The one on the right is the main island where we landed, and above is the hydrogen detonation also. So they have different islands. You have Inuitak, you have Japtan. The island I was in Lojua, which is in the northern side, where I lived for 6 months cleaning up the radiated debris with a total of 4,000 of us were there from 1977 to 1980. Next slide, please. So just want to give you a radius of where exactly the Marshall Islands. They have two atolls, Bikini Atoll and Inuitak Atoll, and we're located on Guam and the Northern Marianas. Next slide.
Just if you could go back to that slide.
Sure.
Sorry, Robert, if you could just point out where we are.
Oh, right there where it says Guam, G-U-A-M.
Okay, Guam is on the left in the red. It's just hard to see, yeah.
Bikini Atoll, and Inuitak Atoll is right next to it. It's
So Bikini Atoll is in the circle?
yes, within the circle.
And
yes.
what is that area in the left, yellow shaded?
That's the FSM.
Okay,
Yes, on the
Thank
bottom
you.
part. Yes.
all right, thank you very much.
Next slide, please. These are 5 categories. Next, go all the way to the 5th, please. Yeah, on-site participants. Go back, please. Yeah, Inuitak Atoll cleanup from 1977, 1980. Okay, thank you. Next. This is a photograph. That's the late Sergeant Ed Bloss holding up the coconut crab. The gentleman with him sitting down is Mr. Siswico, and that's me on the left with Sergeant Ed Bloss. We were stationed in Lojua to clean up the radiation, and I just wanted to show you that we were young soldiers at that time, and we had no clue why we were there. They just told us go clean it up. So next slide. So this is how we went to work. That's our medevac. These are the debris we buried into the dome. Next slide. And that's some of the guys that I was with back in 1977. And just the other day, the National Academies of Science through the Columbia University submitted a report stating that the Marshall Islands are still higher readings in their soil samples, higher than Chernobyl and Fukushima. And so it's amazing that I'm still alive. Next slide. So this was a detonation back in 1958, and when it's a nuclear detonation. So next slide. And what it did was it made this crater. And believe it or not, when I was the first job I was we landed here, and I was to drain the contaminated water that I didn't know was contaminated, and we drained this crater. And next slide. And next, please. And then we filled it with radiated debris. Next slide. And we completed it in 1980. And this is what it looks like today. And so that, matter of fact, on the NDAA bill that I read, is that they passed a law in there, a supplement, that they're going to, believe it or not, in there it said that they're going to remove the debris and relocate it. Where they're going to relocate it, I don't know where. And that they're going to repair the dome. And it's in the NDAA report, because believe it or not, I read the whole report. And so that's amazing. I don't know what they're going to do. Next slide. So November 1st, 1952, they detonated the first hydrogen bomb in the Marshall Islands in Inuitak. Next slide. And so 3 days, how the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act came into fruition was in 1990 that they passed a law for compassionate payments. Next slide. And next, please. Thank you. Okay. The Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, RECA, was enacted in 1990, Public Law 101-426, requiring the federal government to compensate individuals who develop disease due to the unintended exposure to radiation from atomic testing fallout. Next. This law was established a list of conditions to be met for compensation and a list of compensable cancers. 4 bills that would amend RECA have been introduced in the 107 Congress. An additional measure which appropriates funds to the Radiation Exposure Compensation Trust Fund through 2011 was incorporated into the Defense Reauthorization Act that has now become law. Next, please. In 2020 estimate for fiscal year 2020 is estimated that claim activity would be very similar to prior year activity. The program anticipates that it will have a minimal carry forward funding from FY 2019 The civil estimates that approximately $65 million will be needed for the RICA Trust Fund next year in 2020. Next slide, please. Overview RICA. Okay. Let me see. Okay, this one here. Right. Okay, this is an overview of RICA. The Radiation Exposure Compensation Act offers an apology and monetary compensation to individuals who contracted certain cancers and other serious diseases as a result of their exposure to radiation released during above-ground nuclear weapons tests, or as a result of their occupational exposure while employed in the uranium industry during the build-up to the Cold War. The Department of Justice established the Radiation Exposure Compensation Program within the Civil Division to adjudicate claims under the Act. Since the program commenced operations in April of 1992, 48,049 claims have been filed and over $2.28 billion have been awarded in connection with 34,942 approved claims through September 30, 2018. That's last year. Fiscal year 2020, fiscal 2020 is estimated that claim activity will be very similar to prior activity. The program anticipates that it will have minimal carry-forward funding from fiscal year 2019. Civil estimates that approximately $65 million will be needed for RICA Trust Fund in fiscal year 2020. $2 billion program award benchmark in March of 2015. The department issued a press release announcing the award of more than $2 billion to eligible claimants under this act. This is very important because this program ends in 2022. And with this amendment, the amendment also carries it over to 2045, and that it's very important that even though this has been already assessed for 2020 and 2022, is that the amendment from Senator Mike Crapo, Senate Bill 947, is that it is a permanent funding. They passed the permanent funding, I believe, in 2004, is because they were issuing IOUs to their residents from Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. And so this is a permanent funding, so it carries a lot of questions are where they're going to get the money. The money has already been allocated. So next slide, please. Okay. In 1994, how we were able to find this information, because it was classified. A lot of people didn't realize that our information for Guam was classified till 1994, and that even though we didn't know that we were being exposed to nuclear fallout and being exposed to ionizing radiation, what happened was the Secretary of the Department of Energy, Hazel O'Leary, asked President Clinton to declassify certain agencies like the NSA, FBI, CIA, and so, next slide, please. And so Secretary O'Leary asked President Clinton to form this group, and it's called the Human Radiation Experiments Group Advisory Committee. So President Clinton hired Dr. Ruth Faden, the Executive Director of the Phoebe R. Berman Bioethics Institute from Johns Hopkins University, and she was in the lead. Next slide, please. And so on January 15, 1994, President Clinton appointed the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments. The President created a committee to investigate reports of possibly unethical experiments funded by the government decades ago. The members of the Advisory Committee were 14 private citizens from around the country, a representative of the general public, and 13 experts in bioethics, radiation oncology and biology, nuclear medicine, epidemiology and biostatistics, public health, history of science and medicine, and law. President Clinton asked them to deliver their recommendation to a cabinet-level group, the Human Radiation Interagency Work Group, whose members are the Secretaries of Defense, Energy, Health and Human Services, and Veterans Affairs, the Attorney General, the Administrator of National Aeronautics and Space Administration, Director of Central Intelligence, and the Director of Office of Management and Budget. Some of the experiments the committee was asked to investigate, and particularly a series that included the injection of plutonium into unsuspecting hospital patients, were of special concern to Secretary Hazel O'Leary. Her department had its origins in the federal agency that sponsored the plutonium experiment. These agencies were responsible for the development of nuclear weapons, and during the Cold War, their activities had been shrouded in secrecy, but now the Cold War was over. Next slide. That is it. Okay. Yeah. Next slide, please. Let's go to it. There you go. Yeah. And so what had happened was when they declassified it through this advisory committee, folks from the states found out about the information. So it was two individuals. It was Mr. Begay filed suit, and also Allen filed suit in Texas. And what happened was they went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they were filing that they were exposed to uranium mining and also downwind. So the Supreme Court wrote a writ of certiorari and said that you're in the wrong venue. You need to go to Congress to get to get compensation. And so they did. And so when the information was declassified, they were able to have the 2000 amendments. And so on July 10, 2000, Public Law 106-245, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Amendments of 2000 was passed, introduced by Senator Hatch on August 5, 1999. The amendments were one of many bills introduced in the 106 Congress with the intent to amend this existing law. Most significantly, the 2000 amendments added two new claimants categories, uranium mill workers and ore transporters. It provided additional compensable illnesses. It lowered the radiation exposure threshold for uranium miners, included above-ground miners within the definition of uranium miner. It modified the medical documentation requirements and removed certain lifestyle restrictions. What that meant is that a lot of their people were being denied eligibility because they smoked. So they lifted the smoke ban for them, which was great. It also added additional geographical areas to the downwind claimant categories, and that's where Utah, Nevada, and Arizona were included. Next slide, please. And this is very important. They had the 5 categories. On-site participants, we are fighting for downwinders. They had our partners from the Navajo Nations, our uranium transporters, millers, and miners. And so, next slide. Next, please. Next. And so this here is that in 2004, we were invited to go before the National Academies of Science. You could go to the next slide. And so Dr. Chris Paris, Dr. Youngberg, and I were invited. We took the invitation from Dr. Isaf Nabusi. They had a hearing in Washington, D.C. And so what we did was we hired a retired Mr. William Brady from Nevada, and he came and he represented Guam. I didn't know at that time that Mr. Brady was with the National Academies of Science and also from General Electric, and that he received the highest award before he retired from the National Academy of Science. So he was detrimental for Guam to be included in the eligibility for RECA. Next slide. And so this was Lieutenant Bert Schreiber. He was under acute clearance under Department of Energy that he couldn't say anything or they imprison him or put him before a firing squad. But I found him on my research, and I called him, and we talked and said, could you give us a sworn testimony on your experience here in Guam? He said he couldn't because it was under acute clearance. Mr. Schreiber called the Department of the Navy, Department of Defense. They said, yes, it has been declassified in 1994. So he gave us a sworn testimony, and this sworn testimony was submitted to the National Academies of Science when I was there. Next slide, please. Yes, next. Yeah. So this is Dr. Preston, and this is our friend, Dr. Isaf Nabusi. Believe it or not, she now works for Department of Energy. So we submitted our oral and written testimony before this group of scientists, and they wrote a report a year later in 2005. Next slide. Next, please. Yes, next. And this is the front page of the report. It's the assessment of the scientific information for the radiation exposure screening and educational program. Next, please. And it's very important on page, actually this is page 200. And what it says is that the committee initiated, I don't have that copy, but what it says is conclusion as a result of the analysis, the committee concludes that Guam did receive measurable fallout from the atmospheric testings in the Pacific, and that the residents of Guam during that time period should be eligible for compensation under RECA in a way similar to that of downwinders. So all our efforts, PARs, I give our, we couldn't do it on our own, and I thank them for sending me to the National Academies of Science. And this is what the scientists wrote in their report, and that's why we're here today. And we submitted this to the Senate. And
Mr. Celestia, just
yes.
to, so this is a page of a publication by the National Academies of Sciences.
That is correct,
with
Senator.
the conclusion regarding Guam.
That's correct.
Thank
Yes.
you very much.
And so it's not just Robert Celestia saying it anymore. So, you know, if they want to go argue with the highest scientific community in Washington, D.C. They're the ones saying it. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so in this report, in this published report, remember November 1st, 1952, they detonated the first hydrogen gel. 3 days later, they recorded high levels of radiation here in Guam. And that was one of the testimonies that Lieutenant Birchfriar said, that his Geiger counters were going off the scale up there in Nimitz Hill. So the evidence was there. Next slide, please. And here you have the, the recordings from different states and Guam. And Salt Lake City came in highest. And we on Guam received the second highest of strontium-90 exposure to ionizing radiation. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. And I appreciate the scientists for putting this in there. Next, please. And these are the specific diseases. And I guess that's what a lot of us are concerned, is that leukemia, but not chronic lymphocytic leukemia, multiple melanoma, primary cancer of the pharynx. And there was a question at one time, is that nasopharyngeal cancer? And so I'm not a physician, so I can't answer that one. Okay. And so primary cancer of pharynx, lymphomas other than Hodgkin's disease, primary cancer of the small intestine, primary cancer of salivary gland, primary cancer of the brain, primary cancer of the stomach, primary cancer of the urinary and bladder, primary cancer of the colon, primary cancer of thyroid, cancer of the pancreas, cancer of the male and female breast, primary cancer of esophagus, cancer of bile ducts, cancer of the liver, except if there is evidence of cirrhosis or hepatitis B. Primary cancer of the gallbladder, cancer of the lung, cancer of the ovary. So these are the cancers and leukemia that are eligible to file a claim if Guam is included in this bill. Next slide, please. Hit one more. There you go. So I want to thank Senator Mike Crapo. He invited us to testify before the Judiciary Committee, and I want to thank you, Chairwoman Terlaje, for helping us. You were tremendous assistance while we were there. And I want to point out the three ladies on my right up here. That is Tina Cordova on the black. She is the president for the New Mexico Downwinders, and she's the one that got us in the bill. The other one is Linda Evers for the uranium miners. She's the president. And also Tony Henderson, she's the president of the Downwinders of Idaho. And Tony Taitufunganas flew out there years ago on a Downwinders conference. And she was the one that was able to get us in the Senate bill. And so I want to thank all of them and hope and pray that with the new bill that was introduced yesterday from Congressman Lujan, that we get an invite to go before the House Judiciary Committee this year or next year to testify for Guam. Next, please. There you go. This is the Nevada Exposure Screening and Education Program. Nevada RECEP offers medical outreach and education to those affected by nuclear weapons testing. The United States conducted nearly 200 above-ground nuclear weapons tests from 1945 to 1962. During this time, many test workers, uranium industry working families living or working downwind of the Nevada test site were exposed to harmful radioactive materials. Studies show that people exposed to radiation are at high risk of developing certain cancers. Regular medical screening can help to manage that increased risk. Next, please. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is the service they provide. And then we're hoping that when they pass the bill, that this will be able to bring it to Guam. And so this is what they provide, is physical exam from a physician provided at no cost to those eligible. Screening tests including blood work, urinalysis, chest x-ray, and stool guac. Educational materials about routine cancer screening and other preventive health measures. A summary, a copy of exam results. Referral services. Free assistance with filing claims under the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, $50,000 for eligible for downwinters. In the amendments on the Senate and the House, they're amending it to increase it to $150,000.
Mr. Celestial, we could just pause right there for
Sure.
1 second. This is the most important part, I think, that I would like for everyone to just absorb. So you're showing us an example of Nevada.
Yes.
And if Guam is included under RECA, we're supposed to also be provided these benefits.
Yes.
Right? And so you outlined the free free medical care. And
That's correct.
There's a list of that. Free screening,
Free blood work.
education materials, and then, of course, the compensation.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So this is very significant for our entire community, even those who don't have this disease, I think but the influx of this health care is going to help.
It's detrimental
all
for
of us.
Guam, yes, for our people and for the health services and for our hospital, I believe they have a program through the HRSA, the Health Resources Services Administration, that goes to these states and they form a partnership with the clinics and the universities, and they help their people in certain states. So, yes. Any other? Okay, one more and that's it?
Please,
okay,
yes.
The last slide, I believe, is this. Okay, go ahead. Oh, no, that's not the last slide. I just wanted to show, go ahead. Yes, please. National Cancer Benefit Center. This was just some that I found the other day, and what they do is they help their people from their states and with all the information pertaining to cancer and RECA. And so next slide, please. Next. This is the bill, Senate Bill 947. Just wanted to show the people out there that's watching on television. Okay, next, please. Next. Yeah, there you go. When this bill is passed, eligible people of Guam will receive free medical care and $150,000. I want to thank all the PARS members and all those who contributed to this cause, especially you, Senator Therese Terlaje, and the panel there. And most of all, to God Almighty, and amen. That's how I wanted to end it, is that we couldn't have done this without the help of our Lord and the people that's sitting with me and those at home who couldn't make it, that are going through cancer treatments. And thank you so much for all your assistance. And that will end and conclude my PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Celestial. And we have other people signed up to testify, and I recognize all of you. So let's begin with Kathy Rivera Castro.
Good morning. Before I begin, I just wanted to qualify myself. I've appeared before you many times, and as you know, many times when I testify, all my testimonies have always been evidence-based and science-based. But I also want to stress the fact that when I come before you, it's always as the mother and as a member of the community, as an individual that has been through this path of watching a loved one. So I speak for all those individuals in our community that are fighting the good fight along with their loved ones. Buenas and Hafade, Senator Therese Terlaje, Senator Biscoli, and Senator Perez. My name is Kathy Rivera Castro, and I'm a resident of Mongmong. I'm appearing before you in full support of Resolution 94-35 COR. I volunteer for several organizations that promote and creating a healthier island community. Two such organizations I wish to highlight is the Pacific Association of Radiation Survivors, or PARS, for which I serve on the board of directors, and the Guam Comprehensive Cancer Control Coalition, of which I am the current vice chairperson and the incoming 2020 chairperson. The goals and missions of these organizations is to ensure that those in our community has access to health care that would afford them a quality of life that each of us deserve, but ultimately saves lives. My most important role, however, is that of a mother and a grandmother. This is why I so often appear before this legislative body. I take many opportunities to speak about my son Andre, his medical condition, and the challenges he and our family has had and continues to face. Andre was diagnosed with osteoclastoma in 2008. It's a giant cell tumor in his thoracic 10, his spine. Andre is one of the thousands of individuals from our community that have been diagnosed with a life-threatening medical condition and continue to fight the good fight to stay alive. The Guam Cancer Registry data during the period of 2008 to 2012 shows that at least 60% of new cancer cases and cancer deaths comprise of the cancers compensable under RECA. This is an alarming statistic. Senator, this is our loved ones. We are U.S. citizens that reside in the U.S. territory. This is our home and our people who have been exposed to ionizing radiation due to the measurable fallout from atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons in the Pacific. I made this promise to my son when he was first diagnosed. Son, you need to fight this disease, for only you can. But I promise you that I will fight anything and anyone to get you what you need to stay alive. Let us allow these fighting their disease to concentrate on merely that, fighting the disease within their bodies. But let us continue to join forces and fight everyone and everything else for them. Any access to medical or financial assistance is critical to their livelihood, continuity of care, and peace of mind. I know that many that need much more help, but they have exhausted all available resources. Having Guam included in the benefits provided under RECA is so needed. Mr. Robert Celestial and the PARS organization has been pursuing the inclusion of Guam for over 21 years. During the 115th Congress on January 24th, 2017, Senator Mike Crapo of Idaho submitted Senate Bill 97, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act of 2017, to amend Section 4B1 to include Guam under the affected areas. In 1946, the first nuclear testing was conducted. 6 years later, in 1952, Lieutenant Charles Burt Schreiner reported that Guam and her people were exposed to radiation as a result of downwind. In 2005, the National Research Committee submitted a report to the U.S. Congress, which was the assessment of the scientific information for radiation exposure screen and education program, also called as RECEP, concluded that, and I quote, recommendations from the Radiation Exposure Screening and Education Program, RECEP, report in 2005 concludes that Guam did receive measurable fallout from atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons in the Pacific. Residents of Guam should be eligible for compensation under RECA in a way similar to that of persons considered to be downwinders, end quote. For over 70 plus years, the plight of our people has not been recognized. This decision has immensely impacted the health of our people of Guam. Exposure has not only affected our people, but our environment, our water, our land, our sea, and our air. I'm happy to support this resolution because it will assist cancer patients and their families who have been impacted by radiation exposure. The financial burden of cancer is enormous. The physical challenges are many, and the need for assistance and support is great. Our people have always been faced with the hardship of access to comprehensive cancer care due to our distance from specialty care treatment centers, so they are often faced with the additional burden of having to travel far to access specialized care. This in itself adds additional financial implications on top of the already high cost of cancer care and treatment. Having Guam included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act will truly benefit our people, who will be able to avail of the compensation to assist them in their cancer journey. Our people have waited way too long for this inclusion. Our family members that have lived during the period of the nuclear testing has suffered greatly, albeit quietly. Cancer is so prevalent in our community. I have family members whose parents have had cancer, and this dreadful disease has been passed on to the next generation and the generations after them. I remember stories from my grandparents, my mother and her siblings, about resources being so scarce after the war. Our families mostly lived off the land. They did not know that the soil and the water were contaminated, and naturally did not consider the possibility that the world around them, which had always provided for them, would be detrimental to their health and the health of their offsprings. There have been so many that have lost their battle to this dreadful disease, but there are still many that continue to fight with everything they have. I would be remiss if I failed to acknowledge that to include Guam will address the issues of social injustice and equity for the people of Guam, as it provides some compensations for their exposure. We must continue to stand with them and with their families. I stand with them, and I appeal to President Donald Trump and the members of the U.S. Congress to include our island in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act of 1990. Our people who have been impacted by radiation exposure deserve to be acknowledged, that their suffering is not without recognition or without cause. Let them know that a life matters. Their life matters. I also wish to state that cancer is the second leading cause of mortality on Guam. That is an alarming statistic. Thank you once again for allowing me this opportunity to appear before you and to make my voice heard. Saina Maasi, Bentishan.
Thank you very much, Ms. Castro. Mr. John Farnham.
Good morning. Seems like we're continuously coming around these times, but Madam Speaker, Senator Perez, Senator Biscoli, thank you for having us this morning. I believe most of everything I wanted to say has come through three of you people, so I mirror things that you've said to this bill that we're going through, as well as Mr. Robert Celestial and Kathy here. I want to just add on to the things that we have dealt with my immediate family. My mom lived only 65 and 11 months. She had lung cancer. She never made her 66th birthday. I also lost my dad with a liver and throat cancer in 2003 at the age of 79. I lost my sister-in-law, my oldest brother, deceased now, to a throat cancer in 2015, September, and my youngest brother at the age of 49 with colon, and 90% was engulfed in his liver. They gave him 6 months hospice, and he only lasted 6 weeks. I myself was diagnosed in 2009, September, as a head cancer. I don't know how long it was going to take me to go through chemo. I did max chemo and max radiation back in LA. I've been in remission since 2010, September. And dear old Lord, and coming from this gentleman beside me, that's the strength, that's our energy that that person provides us. But just to add on that anybody and his family member themselves is diagnosed with cancer, it changes that person in a heartbeat. It changes the lives, even changes. And the biggest support group really comes from your immediate family. If there's any link that some of those immediate family don't care, you might as well forget that person that is enduring that cancer, because they're going to give up. So the immediate support is us as family. I guess there's so many people, like Kathy here and others here, that have shared, even Mr. Robert, even what he's been pushing for all of these things here, through all his dedication on getting all of these things put together, and this is where we at. But I just was recently seeing this in television about this actor, okay, Danny Thomas. He was very involved in great support and donation to our children's, your St. Jude. But there's something he said that should widen our thoughts too, is that he can't do it alone. We need help, okay? And I ask, and I hope the whole body can press on. There's going to be times that we're going to be invited to the house or somewhere we need to travel. You know, we're a non-profitable organization. I would really appreciate if our elected leaders could get in there where we can put a funding source where our people can make these meetings and hearings or something. And aside from that, I want to thank you. And I speak for all the people that are not able to speak anymore. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farnham. And I wrote down your suggestion for a funding source for people to testify in Congress on these bills. Next on our list is not signed up for oral testimony, but I want to recognize their presence, Mr. Antonio Tiding Fong and Mrs. Dolores Tiding Fong. Thank you for being here. I know you're founding members of PARS, and I want to thank you for all your years of advocacy. Ms. Linda Paris.
Okay. Good morning, Senator Terlaje, Senator Perez, and Senator Bisco-Lee. Thank you again for allowing us to come here before you to speak on behalf of the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. I would like to first, before I go any further, to thank Robert Celestio. He's been an advocate. He's been so strong and so diligent and committed to going up against many giants. When I say giants, it's not just here on Guam in terms of the legislators and the governors and the lieutenant governors, but also going up against the giants up in Congress. And it takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of guts, takes a lot of commitment. But behind Robert are all the other members that are here, that are next to me and behind me. I'm part of the founding members when we first started this organization. There were 50 plus members and supporters, and if you saw the first picture, you're going to see that the group was really big. And unfortunately, there's not many of us left. There's only 3 of us really, plus Robert. I don't see anyone else here and if I forgot someone, please forgive me. But I just want to say that when Robert first brought this to our attention, it appeared to be something very important to all of us here on the island and something that was needed. But of course, we were skeptical, and the reason we were skeptical is because we didn't have firsthand experience as Robert did. But his efforts to continue to encourage us and to continue to enlighten us and to educate us and have all these memberships and go through all these PowerPoint, it just started to put the picture together. So we decided to join Robert and try to fight the cause. Fortunately enough, I was able to meet with Lieutenant Bert Schreiber, and he's as Robert mentioned, the radiological, the biological and chemical officer at the time when there was a high incidence of radiation here in Guam. And I had the privilege to be with him and to go around the island and to see these sites of where the radiation exposure was very elevated. And he did share something with me. He said he could not hold back any further of the truth of what he knew about what was happening to the people of Guam. And that was one reason why he wanted to come here to give us his testimony of what transpired and how they handled the situation then. And unfortunately, we were left out in the cold. We were not informed, and we were going through all these ailments, medical conditions as a result of the hidden truth. And so I saw the sights. And as we were doing this, as we were touring, it just kept hurting and hurting and hurting every time he would share stories with me. And how the military held this information from us, and how even some government officials knew and they held it from us because it's going to cause a panic. Well, moving forward, and after his testimony, it just helped me to understand what my role is going to be. And my role was to be an advocate, to speak up for those that couldn't speak, or for those who are still alive but have cancer. And unfortunately, we have lost a lot of lives as a result of cancer. And those lives, those people are not going to be heard, never going to be heard. And so this is the opportunity now for me to speak on their behalf. I'm a medical professional. I've been a medical professional for 30 years. So I hear, I see, I even smell cancer patients. And I hear what they have to go through. And I hear how their rights have been taken from them. Not only have I worked with patients, but I also have a sibling who had passed on from cancer. And she was not given the opportunity to watch her son graduate. It was through FaceTime. And that was when she first got diagnosed with cancer. And then 2 years later, she was on her deathbed. And her second child, which is her only daughter, she only has one son, one daughter. So the first time she couldn't attend his graduation because she was in Hawaii undergoing medical treatment for her cancer. 2 years later, she was on her deathbed. And she too couldn't see her daughter graduate. So we had to FaceTime for her. So that was an opportunity that she could have had with her children, but she couldn't. I have just lost recently another uncle, and then a husband and wife, my auntie and uncle, just less than a month apart, just a couple of months ago. And then another uncle that just passed. So these are hitting home really hard because it's not just my extended family. These are immediate families to me. Just like Mr. Farnham had mentioned, it was his siblings. His siblings and his parents. So I want to say that if everyone comes together and join forces and help with this cause, this is not only going to benefit me or the PARS group, it's going to benefit the entire island. And if truly our hearts and our minds are here to serve the people of Guam, then I challenge all of you to come join forces with us and help us to make noise about the hidden truth. And I thank you for listening, and I thank all the PARS members here, especially those that are still with the organization, because at the end, there are resources that can help our people that are faced and challenged with cancer. And that's why it's important for us to continue to support Robert, the PARS organization, and those that are not here to speak on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paris. Mr. Peter Onodera.
Half a day. Guahus Peter Onodera, tato senahanya zo za ola mon anako membro ko gwinin inenon I Pacific Association of Radiation Survivors. Utunga na mas de 20 años edad niya na inenon za utunga si Robert is the kitatya ni finanso teterua am gina tiempo lo Pas guida mano no militar pas I dos pagonya no genin estudianteco giza Universidad Guahan. Nueva zo na member gwini gi pars gi mapusan na sakan hu tutuhon sumaunaw sa podiretiraw zo zang pues genin lago zo magi sumaga zo kada tiempo giza San Diego za sumaunaw zo gwigi Sons and Daughters of Guam Club of San Diego za magay Migay na tomorrow ni ufagtai gwihi ni mantoto Guam, manginin Guam, manatatiziha manmatay putsenot concept za kalan ahongang zo sa unggan utunga po di itsenot concept gwini sa sinanaw no manaswada sa sunya sa concept pues itilu Palawan unwa itilu Palawan lo chess concept niya ifinena na ihikadunya lumagasa taf za manasua pues minados na concept niya patin Palawan gisang papa magasa lo kuezu taf pues manasua pues ultimo biyahe leukemia kumoni itilu za dos Palawan gilina lao na sinanaw za ni itiluho afekta zo nezo lo tiu hasuzi mas podeno siya na tempo sa gi familian mami pafa di bay puni lo gi familian mami diabetes itsenot na mas tadung jan feda ni afekta hami sina besangani hamzo na gi unkanay sina pagun tufung kwanto na onidera tetenan gwinigi mismo na isla sa mandikikiam na familia mas kasya mestison sa panis sa muruham law afekta zo pues un tempo actually just biyahe mambisita zo guato giza islan Matshot, Marshall Islands. Za gwina tempo por edukasyon, por Universidad Guahan, por izima fananan non PIBA, Pacific Islands Bilingual Bicultural Association. Humuzung zo gi komunidad, tat como maskisa confidential o dinanya lo kwe pes the bisangan is the vernacular. In English, I was made aware of jelly babies, although I never actually saw one. But there was the lone graveyard that was there was filling up fast. And then the many people that I would run into, make an acquaintance and network and become friends and so forth, I was shocked beyond belief when the following year I was told that they passed away. All as a result of what was happening then. And then I started to perk up a little bit. And like I said, I would have been a member of PARS a long time ago because I also knew Dr. Walter Chris Paris. We grew up together in Sinahanya, and although he was a grade ahead of me, we were actually classmates because he skipped a grade. That's how smart he was. It made me sick, but anyway. And so through the years, we would run into each other, and at that time, at one point in time, in one of my plays that I was able to produce, he talked to me about PARS, or the original organization that he helped found and so forth. But it was just too busy because I was just busy. I don't know what else to say about that and so forth. So it wasn't until I retired, and then I lived for a time in San Diego, like I said, and got to know the community there and got to know a little bit more about the ailments that seem to plague the Chamorros also living off island. And so forth. So finally, when I came home, I decided to give it a shot and become a member of PARS. So I just joined last year. And quite honestly, as a retiree, I'm still as busy as ever. And you can tell these people that they haven't seen me in meetings, although I would love to attend monthly, which has been held at their conference room at your office. But nevertheless, my heart is in there because this is an alarming, as Cathy Rivera Castro said, it's an alarming situation because although it's a number 2 killer on Guam, it's rising. And this is something that we as people from Guam, not necessarily just Chamorros, but everybody, because it's affecting us. So even in my own family alone, cancer is on the rise. It's starting to rival diabetes in my immediate family and close relatives and so forth. And as we speak today, and a cousin of mine had colon cancer, and her sister now has lymphocytic, which I think is the second list that was up there, lymphocytic cancer and so forth. So it's scary. And I think that from the membership that I've seen of PARS and so forth, it's nice, it's well managed, it's moderate in scope and in membership, but I think it should be inundated with thousands more, because this is really a serious matter, and I really would give credit to Robert Celestial and my colleagues who are sitting alongside me here, many of whom are original members, to really take this to heart. So I'm here in support of resolution number 94-35, which is to augment the proposed legislation in the Congress of the United States at this very moment too. So we just need to continue to build up and continue to assert our public education campaign and knowledge and whatever is necessary that we need to face this head on. And I commend and thank you, Senator Therese and Senator Regine and Senator Sabina, for really taking this to heart, because it is obviously very, very serious. Jesus Masi.
Ms. Maria Cruz is also here in support. Thank you. And recognize now Ms. Renata Berdali.
I hope that's not the extent of my Chamorro, but I'm not fluent, so. Thank you, Del Peter, and for speaking in Chamorro, and for all the people, especially our Manamko, that might be watching TV, and so they can also understand. And again, I have to give thank you, first of all, Speaker Therese, for inviting me to testify, and thank you so much for all the members of PARS, especially Robert Celestial, who's been there, of course, from the start. And I think he was my classmate, too. And I am not a member of PARS. I don't know why I'm not. I'm going to seriously think about that. I'll try to keep my testimony short. I'm testifying as a private citizen. I do work for the University of Guam at the Guam Cancer Registry. But I'm testifying as a private citizen with information, augmented by the information that I know, which is, again, science-based from the registry. And basically, as a private citizen, basically this is an issue, like Kathy said, of promoting health equity. And, Guam has experienced enough disparities, enough discrimination as far as, we have very little control over our future in some ways politically, and so whatever we can do, we need to do. And so I really commend again PARS for taking the lead on this. And again, when I've worked for the Cancer Registry for about 10 years. I knew basically nothing about cancer, and definitely nothing about cancer registries before I worked there, except that my mother had died of cancer at the very young age of about 56. And so I'm always sad that my 3 children never knew their grandmother, who is such a beautiful lady. And there's so many beautiful and wonderful people that of course, have died from cancer and other terrible diseases like diabetes and everything else. So again, from my work, I know that cancer, again, is rising, and that is a disparity because in the U.S., all across the U.S., for the past maybe decade, cancer rates actually have been decreasing overall. And we're talking about all cancers in the U.S. And that's mainly driven by lung cancer and by the reduction in smoking. So lung cancer has always been the big cancer in terms of incidence, how many cases, and mortality. Lung cancer has always been the top. in the US and in most parts of the world, and definitely on Guam also. But because lung cancer, thank goodness, some people are, stopping. Smoking is on the decline. That has driven the slight, the downward, decrease in cancer overall in the U.S. However, on Guam, the disparity, the difference, the inequality is that cancer continues to rise. So, I don't know, are we smoking more? Are we finding more cases of cancer? Are people, reporting it more, going to the doctor more? However, our cases are going up, and also the deaths from cancer are going up. One thing's very interesting. In a way, I always thought of it, it's very good for Guam that our services, cancer services, are increasing, and that's a really good thing. But then you have to wonder, okay, so we went from 1 oncologist, cancer specialist, to 4 in the last, I'm not sure, 10 years. That kind of shows that there must be the amount of people needing cancer treatment must have gone way up. And that's why also, services, more oncologists are coming to Guam. You're not going to come to Guam if you don't have people to treat. So it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing we have the services more available on Guam, so people don't always have to go off island for treatment, depending on the type of cancer they have. It's a bad thing because it shows how many more people are in need of cancer treatment. So survivorship, cancer survivorship is a big issue. And when we talk about the cost of treatment, the cost of cancer treatment, you have to include the cost of survivorship, because one thing I learned working at the registry is that when you have one cancer, you're at more risk, you're at a higher risk to develop another cancer. Not saying that everyone does, but you are at a higher risk to develop another cancer. And I have done, part of my job is we summarize every cancer case reported to us in like a story, but it's in coded form. And you read, sometimes people have 2, 3, 4 cancers, and all those list of cancers that were on the PowerPoint presentation, and I really loved that PowerPoint presentation. Thank you so much. I hadn't seen it, and I don't know if it's the first time it was presented, but it gave a lot of information. All those cancers are on Guam, and so I'm just going to read a table, the 10 most common causes of cancer death in Guam, male and female. Okay, so we'll start with male. I don't know why, but okay, so the 10 top, and this is a study done in Hawaii, between the Hawaii Cancer Registry and the Guam Cancer Registry. So for the years, it's a 5-year period between 2009 and 2013. The top 10 death sites for Guam males: lung and bronchus, prostate, colorectal, liver is number 4, pancreas, number 5, nasopharynx, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, kidney and renal pelvis, esophagus, and stomach cancer. So those are the top 10 for males, and the top 10 for females. Lung again is number 1, 2 is breast, 3 colorectal, 4 liver, 5 pancreas, 6 the uterus, 7 ovary, 8 stomach, 9 non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and 10 cervical cancer. And all those cancers were listed, I believe all those cancers, I'm not sure about cervix, but all those cancers were listed on that list of cancers possibly related to radiation. Let's see. So basically, you know, I'm glad we did talk about screening, and they say, you know, people used to think of cancer as a death diagnosis. No, it's not. There are many people surviving from cancer, and that's why we really have to deal with survivorship issues, like, you know, increasing the quality of life for those people who are living with cancer or have survived cancer. And, you know, a bill like this, if it's passed, again, that money is going to go for helping people with treatment costs, and then if they survive their cancer, they will have more money to, again, deal with the after effects of cancer. So screenings, you know, they say, we like to say screening and early detection is the cure for cancer. You know, and so I also work with the Guam Cancer Coalition, and we really are, you know, promoting screening for cancers. And again, I'm just, as a private citizen and informed by my work, I'm so fully in support of this this resolution, which, you know, supports the bill in Congress. And now I'm so happy to hear that there's also one in the House. Let's see. That's about all I have to say. I may be submitting some written testimony later on. But again, thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bertalia. That's you really drive home the urgency of this measure in a very practical way. And with the statistics on cancer for Guam, all of those cancers listed under the RICA as covered illnesses. And the importance of screening, which is also a covered benefit under RICA. So thank you very much. I'd like to ask my colleagues if they have any questions or comments for the panel. Senator Regine Lee.
Sujos Masi, Madam Chair, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for coming and participating in this hearing, for lending your voices in support of what we're attempting to do. And I would be remiss if we didn't also recognize our brothers and sisters in the RMI. I'm glad that the Senator had mentioned them, all the other downwinders. And Mr. Celestial, I know that you have worked so closely with them over the years, really to in a very strategic way. And I think it's so important that you have made these connections and you have created this network with people all across the country, because in the same way that, you know, many of the members of our panel today were speaking, that, you know, one person can go a little bit of the way, but together with our brothers and sisters in the Southwest of the United States and all across this region, our voices are so much more powerful. And so it gives me a lot of hope that we can bring this finally to resolution for people like you, Mr. Celestial, for all of our friends and our family members who have suffered greatly from these diseases and who have suffered from not having their voices be heard. And so I just want to thank all of you for lending your voices, everybody that's here in support, and those who obviously couldn't make it today. But I also want to take a moment to thank our champions, you know, in the House and in the Senate, who've helped to move this message forward. I know you mentioned Senator Hatch, who's no longer there, I don't think, but yeah, RICA 2000. So this has been a really long time coming, and we have a lot of supporters in the House and in the Senate who are helping us, who are championing these issues. But it's very important for our local advocates to be there in Congress to make sure that, you know, when you're face to face with somebody who's experienced something, it's so much more powerful than sending an email or having a phone call. When they see you, you are a living testament to what many of our brothers and sisters have been through up until this point. And so it's extremely powerful. And I'm just so grateful, Mr. Celestial, for your years of advocacy, your decades of advocacy on behalf of our community in this way. And I want to thank the chair certainly for continuing to give you, lend that support. And I will also continue to lend my support to all of your efforts. But I just think that, I think the House bill is really exciting for us. There's a lot of opportunity there. And again, it just provides this avenue for justice for our people here in Guam, in the NMI. And, you know, on a personal note, many members of my family have been have felt the after effects of this contamination, of this exposure. And, you know, both of many of my grandparents and their siblings, it's incredible. My grandmother and every single one of her siblings have either already passed or are currently survivors of cancer. Every single one, different kinds. And it's just, when you were going through that litany of all of the different kinds of cancer, I was just thinking, you know, okay, that's Auntie Tello, okay, that's my grandmother, okay, you know, that's Auntie Rose who passed away. And it's so real for our community. So I just really want to thank you for taking the time always to continue to educate me about this issue and educate the body. And yeah, I don't really have any questions about this. You absolutely have my support on this resolution. And I'm just so grateful to you for taking the time and your own personal, you know, giving money to be able to fly out there, and your own truly personal commitment to ensuring justice for our people. Situasmasi. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Lee. Senator Sabina Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend you, Robert Celestial, for your persistence all these years. I know when I first met you, I think it was in 2005, when Lieutenant Bert Schreiber came here to Guam and gave his apology. And I just want to thank you for opening up my eyes then, and for persisting and all your service to make this, to have this come so far, and to see justice. We're at the doorstep of justice for our people. And so I really want to thank you so much. I'm really inspired by what you have done for our people. And I want to thank everyone here today, you know, for standing alongside this cause. And yeah, I'm really touched. And I know that with cancer, you know, it does hit our families. And, you know, I only wish that we can, you know, that this, you know, this wasn't normalized in our community. Because when I talk to other islanders, it's not as big as it is here on Guam. And it's not something that we should accept. It's something that we need to heal our land, heal our people. And so thank you for providing this opportunity to our people. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A couple items I wanted to make sure that I read and I forgot earlier, but we received testimony this morning also from Mr. Ed Blounce. So if I could just read it very quickly. My name is Ed Blounce, and I am the president of the Guam Medical Society. I've discussed this issue with the other members of our board of directors, and we wish to speak about the issue. I apologize that I am unable to attend this hearing. I will be working all day at Guam Memorial Hospital, but please see my testimony below. From the 1950s to the 1980s, many nuclear bomb tests were conducted in the Pacific region. A significant number of the tests in this area were conducted by the US, but England and France also conducted tests in the Pacific. Early on, the long-term side effects of ionizing radiation were not known, but as time went on and the tests continued, knowledge of the damaging effects of radiation had increased. These tests have not only caused health problems to those present at the time of the test, but affect people to this day. The reason we still experience consequences now, years after this testing had finished, is that the fallout given off has contaminated the soil and water. It also damaged the cellular DNA of those around at the time, which has genetically been passed on to their offspring. Nuclear testing exposure has been linked to cancers, leukemia and lymphoma, as well as solid tissue tumors, thyroid, lung, breast, GI, bone, brain, skin, prostate, have been linked to hydrogen bomb tests. Nuclear testing ionizing radiation exposure has also been linked to non-cancerous illness. These issues include cataracts, as well as heart and lung disease. Hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism have been associated with ionizing radiation as well. Due to the seriousness of the health issues linked to nuclear testing and the long-term impact it has, I believe Guam should move forward to be linked as a downwind area. This would provide support for mitigating possible environmental contaminants and also assist with caring for patients with illness linked to such testing. Edward A. Blounce, D.O., M.S.Ed., 2019 President, Guam Medical Society.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I want to thank Dr. Blantz also, and if possible, just listening to his testimony, and we could bring him to the house to give testimony also from a medical physician, that would be excellent.
Great idea. All right. Mr. Celestio, thank you for outlining and summarizing who this RICA bill would cover on Guam, those who were here from 1946 to 1962. I'm calculating 57 years or older now, right? If you were here, born in 1962. And at the time, there were about 50 to 60,000 people on Guam. They have to prove diagnosis with one of the cancers that you listed in your presentation. And the benefits that this bill would bring to Guam, including Guam under RICA, would bring an apology for exposure to radiation.
Yes.
Compensation, which this bill will increase from 50 under the current program to 150,000.
That's correct.
None of which Guam is receiving right now. Free medical care, including screening.
Yes.
And would this cover those who've passed away?
The way the law is right now with the Code of Federal Regulation is that if the individual had passed, then a spouse may apply for the compensation, or the children, or even down to their grandchildren could apply for it. Yes.
It really is a very beneficial program. And then I too, Senator Lee reminded me that we should give thanks to those who have sponsored this bill in Congress. So I have the Senate sponsors in front of me.
Yes.
Including Senator Crapo, of course, and Senator Udall, Senator Risch, Senator Heinrich, Senator Bennett, and Senator Booker. And I remember Senator Booker was there at our hearing for the last bill when you were there.
And also the one that's running for president, Kamala Harris was there, B. Thalmer was there, and then Senator Grassley came in later, and Senator Ted Cruz was also there, as I remember.
Isn't that so impressive? So do you have in front of you the list of the sponsors for the House bill that was just recently introduced?
No, I don't, but it's 38. The bill number is H.R. 3783. And when I went on Thomas for the Congress, is that the text hasn't been out of to report out. But the bill number is 3783. Actually,
I'm looking at just the list of co-sponsors, and there are 2 pages of them.
Oh my God.
So that's very great. And I want to thank again Representative Lujan and our own Congressman.
Yes, I am hopeful, Chairwoman, is because Congressman Lujan is the Assistant Speaker, and that I believe that in his last statement in his press release is that he is going to push for it, to have it heard in the House, and hopefully he'll get it passed in the Judiciary Committee. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
yes,
if I may, I just wanted to bring up an issue that I do know, as Dr. Safa said earlier, that many of our brothers and sisters in our neighboring islands come here for dialysis treatment, but that is also similar to cancer care and cancer treatment. And, economically, our island is burdened because most of our cancer patients are those that access the MIP, Medically Indigent Program, and the Medicaid program. And if this can just give us additional financial support for health care, it would definitely help our economy big time as far as the health systems, So I just wanted to bring that up because I do know that many of our cancer patients come from our outer islands, from our brothers and sisters.
May I?
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Yes, that really emphasizes why we need to be all in, right? Yes, Mr. Celestio.
I just want to mention that for the first time, the Northern Marianas have been included in the bill, and that for many, many years we've been advocating, and that I'm glad that for the first time Congressman Sablan was able to get it in the bill. So they also will be included, and so we thank Congressman Lujan for doing that. Yes.
Thank you. And I would just like to conclude this hearing by again giving thanks and some recognition. It is actually, everything we know about this really came to the forefront of everybody's because of Mr. Celestial. He, on his late time, was trying to figure out why his colleagues had passed away or all became very seriously ill, and did his own research. And really amazingly to me, even, I'm a lawyer, but this is very amazing to me that he was able to search through, at the time, declassified documents, because as Ms. Perez said, these were hidden from everyone, this knowledge of except for those who were reading the Geiger counters at the moment, and the Navy officials who we reported it to. So Mr. Celestial really looked through these declassified documents, which many of those documents have since become classified again, by the way. So we were very lucky that he was very diligent and did not give up, and that he was smart enough to do this. And this was years ago. So it's very sad that we're continuing years later after, and when you said he went up against giants, you were absolutely correct, because not only those giants that you said, but giants like the United States Department of Energy, who refused to agree that was correct. They denied, and they fought him, I think, all the way, and he used his own resources to find people to testify, to bring in scientists, he's seen a lot of these people pass away, unfortunately, so I know there's a lot of personal, you invest a lot of your personal energy and heart into this. And the other giants that I want to just give them credit for, were the giants here on Guam, all of us skeptics, right? Not believing at the time because it's coming from Mr. Celestial and not from the people who really it should have come from, right? The government should have told us this is what happened to you. But he's trying to convince everybody in the government is that this is what happened to us. And so I am so grateful to Dr. Chris Perez, who helped him out in this regard, added a lot of, his stature to this advocacy efforts. Those senators who believed him finally early on, right, who also helped to create that blue ribbon panel, and just all those people who helped you along the way. It's going to take all of us. It's taken all of us to get this far. We really pray that we can receive this benefit now. This program is set to expire in 2022. And so, time's ticking, and it's always been ticking because people are passing away, and we've seen the crisis that we have here. So I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Celestial, and all of those who've helped you. We've not forgotten them and all of their efforts, and I'm glad that you recognized them earlier. I think I forgot to mention Senator B.J. Cruz. Our speaker has always still been a very big advocate. Speaker Judy Wampat, Mark Forbes. And I want to thank you again. And PARS has been so critical because PARS does fundraisers every year to raise money to recognize people who have passed from cancer and do a little ceremony tribute to them and prayers for them. But PARS also, it's an advocacy group. So it raises money to advocate, to do what it needs to put out ads in the newspaper, to all those costs that it bears. And recently, the cost to send Mr. Celestial to testify at Congress was borne by him and you. And so all of you and members of the community who contributed to that effort, we are very grateful. I was there with Mr. Celestial when he was testifying, and so of course that was huge. He was excellent, and. But I have to tell you, when we went to the congressmen and the senators' offices, Mr. Celestial, I thought it was, you can't replace that interaction, right? He personally was there cleaning up. And at one point, I remember he was talking about, what they suffered. He didn't know what was going on. They just know that they were suffering different things. But at one point, I'll never forget this, but this is the visual that sticks in my mind, is one of the congressmen, all of a sudden, Mr. Celestial said, well, yes, and I my legs, it still shows. And so he lifts up his pants, the leg of his pants to show that, these are physical impacts that continue to affect him today. And I've seen him over the years suffer from, even sometimes mobility issues, yet he perseveres. And all of you, I want to thank all of you. So very, very grateful, and we are going to all work together to get this done. I want to thank all of my colleagues in the 35th Guam Legislature. They have unanimously signed on to this. And so we are going to help our congressman in his efforts and continue to help PARS in their advocacy. Si Zeus Masi Todos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are going to continue to accept written testimony until July 26, 2019. Those may be submitted to the Guam Congress Building or to my office or to Senator terlajeguam@gmail.com. This public hearing is now adjourned. The time is 11:55 a.m. Thank you.